Hey guys, this is Valkrin. I'm here with a different kind of video today. A while ago, I got a message from a player who was dedicated to getting into the professional scene. He had been playing through some of the minor tournaments like Go for LOL and constantly spammed solo queue in an effort to gain ELO. He wanted to know what I thought he could do to get into the professional scene, and here are my thoughts on the subject. Becoming a pro player in League of Legends seems like it's an easy thing to do, but in reality it's a very long process that takes dedication and a little luck. I would consider myself a pro League of Legends player, but just barely. I'm the support for Cognitive Gaming, which is one of the 4 amateur teams that qualified for PAX promotion. I make a little money from playing League, but I don't make nearly enough to be financially independent. I would consider myself to be in the lowest totem pole of the professional League of Legends players. When I was on the outside of the pro scene looking in, I was very misinformed about how to become a pro. I thought that a player could just play a lot of solo queue, get high ranked, then immediately get noticed and picked up by a pro team. I thought that the only reason why players like Dyrus and Boy were even on pro teams were because they were really high ranked in solo queue. Although it's very important to be highly ranked, it's one of the least important things on the road to becoming a pro player. There are 4 objectives that need to be understood and fulfilled before pursuing the pro scene. Developing the right attitude, developing connections, team swapping the right way, and maintaining persistent perseverance. Attitude is probably the single most important thing. You can't be a toxic player, rager, complainer in solo queue and expect to be noticed in a good way. Even if you're an exceptionally good player, you have to prove yourself before anyone will care. I strongly believe that no one plays this game to the fullest potential, and everyone has room to improve. You have to be humble. A player who has a positive approach and always seeks to improve will be more likely to be noticed than someone who's arrogant. Off the top of my head, it's incredibly hard to name a player that was considered toxic or rude that was able to stay on a pro team for longer than a couple months. Honestly, that's how it should be. Your attitude greatly affects your reputation. As you start to gain recognition from the community and from teams, your summoner name becomes a brand. It's nearly impossible to change people's perceptions of your brand once they've made up their minds about it. If the first thing someone thinks of when a player summoner name is mentioned has to do with a bad solo queue experience, then opportunities will be lost. Connections will naturally arise as your brand grows. These connections directly affect the opportunities you'll receive. You'll meet team managers and other players on an everyday basis online. Making friends with them will help you see opportunities that wouldn't normally be on the surface. When players drop from teams, there's a very small window of opportunity to try out for teams. Because of the nature of League of Legends, teams generally run tryouts for only a few days. Their choice usually comes down to a couple of good games and word of mouth. If you have a friend on the team, they have more experience with you. They will know how good you really are. The trickiest advice I have to give relates to how to move on when a team is not working out. At some point in your league career, you will eventually be in a bad scenario with the team. This may mean you have teammates that refuse to practice, people that don't take the game seriously, or players that don't seem to work well together. Team swapping is pretty much a must in these cases. However, if you go about these team swaps in the wrong way, you can damage your brand, burn connections, and more importantly, lose friends. In general, this is how joining the amateur scene goes. You start by joining a team of players that have similar rankings to you in solo queue. You practice with them as often as you can. You play rank 5s and scrim other amateur teams. And all this time, you are slowly learning how to play the game at a team level and forgetting the solo queue mentality. Your play begins to look better and better as your team gels together, and finally you receive an invitation to join a better team. You then have to make the choice of sticking with your current team or moving on to better players. Your decision should be honest. If you're on a team that isn't as dedicated to improving or practicing, it'll only hold you back. Getting noticed in the amateur scene is an absolute must in order to transition to the professional scene. You have to either try and form the best amateur team or become noticed enough in the amateur scene to get in a professional team to pick you up as a substitute. The last piece of advice that I can give you is to be patient and never relent. It's going to be a long process, but you have to keep at it in order to make it happen. I can't tell you how many crazy things have happened to me over the past 2 years that have set me back on my road to going pro. I'll only mention one now because I want to save the rest for a video series I'll do later. So I lived in a restaurant for a while. My best friend and I used to frequent the restaurant because the internet was slightly better than the dorm internet. The restaurant owner, who barely spoke English, offhandedly said that there was an empty office in the back that he could rent us, since we were there so frequently. My friend and I were having difficulty finding an affordable apartment to live for the next school semester. So we decided to move in the office inside the restaurant. The rent was really cheap, there was no utility bill, and we lived inside a restaurant so we didn't have to make food. A little while after we moved in, more and more people started coming to the restaurant to use the internet, torrent, and play games. The once 100 to 150 ping became a much more unpredictable 100 to 500 ping. We tried to get separate internet, but no internet service would install because we shared the same address as the restaurant. I had to play several tournaments with absolutely terrible ping. For example, at IEM New York qualifier, I played on unrestricted esports and we just barely didn't qualify for the LAN. A few months later, we figured out a way to trick an ISP into installing internet in the office, but that's a story for another time. If it's your dream to become a pro, then you just have to realize that it's not something that can take place overnight. It's a grind and it's not going to be easy. I hope you liked the video, and I'd like to discuss it in the comments below.